everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham, coming to you from Chicago and the Democratic National Convention. I am joined by my co-host, Vic Mattis, who is back in the States, back stateside. We'll hear about his trip and more. There's lots of news from yesterday at the DNC, and we'll probably give you some bonus episodes this week as I am in Chicago with the libs all week. And we'll keep you updated on it. Vic, here on our morning show for any hour, how are you doing today?
Hello, Mary Catherine. I'm doing fine, though I guess at this point in time, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm doing fine now. And around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I tend to get really sleepy. And then 8 o'clock, I really conk out. Translation, I think I missed day one of the DNC, but I caught up on the highlights or lowlights, if you will. So we'll get to that in a moment. I've got a lot of things going on. Obviously, it was an amazing experience. I'll parcel it out throughout the week because we have all such special treats for our listeners here. It's the content that they want. So just really briefly, it's just an intro, which is through my wife's. I went on a World War II trip with my son. It's what you call a staff ride, in which all the participants on the trip, and there's about 14 of us, and they're all young professionals. And it's sort of to create this awareness of the importance of America in World War II and the sacrifice of our soldiers. But there was about 14 of us, and we all have to play a role. It's a staff ride, so everybody is assigned a role, even my son, who is in high school. And so we had to study that. And then when you get to the point of the location of where your character plays a role, you've got to talk for about 15 minutes and take questions. So he played the role of, I believe it was Captain Joe Dawson, and he was an American from Texas. He is the first American to scale the bluffs at Omaha Beach.
Wow.
And it was him and one other guy. And they just took turns and they found a gap where the machine gun nests get to them. And they took out the machine gun nest and then opened the way for everybody else who was getting,
Jeez.
slaughtered on the beach. So that was him. And I played the role of Major John Howard of the Oxen Bucks Light Infantry, Company D Paragliders Battalion. So there were that. So, and I did mine in an English accent. And
As
we
you
had
should.
of course, we had a historian with us, a really great guy, the author, Charles Lederman. And before I spoke, I said, well, Charlie, beforehand, let me just say I apologize in advance. And I did this thing, and he was very funny. He was like, wow, no, I'd love to have that accent, he said. But in any event, so we traveled through Italy, we started near Naples and up to Anzio, Rome, and then we went out to Normandy, and we hit everything there. And then we went out to Germany in Munich and Nuremberg, and the last bastions of Nazism, and the firefight that went on right until the end of April. And there was a firefight, at Nuremberg Castle, which is insane. So that was the trip in a nutshell. But let me just say for our listeners, and we went to two military cemeteries. Well, we went to several. We went to the Polish military cemetery outside of Anzio because the Polish had a huge presence fighting up the boot in Italy and sacrificed a lot, along with New Zealanders and Indians, parts of the British Empire. It was really
Right.
quite incredible. Canadians, of course, a fierce firefight. But I went to the American cemetery. We went to the American cemetery outside of Anzio. It's like basically Nettuno. And there are something like, I don't know, 60,000 Americans who died there and
Wow.
in Italy. And many of them are buried there. And there was not many people there. And that was really quite something because at the time people thought they were like, oh, you missed D-Day. And you had it easy because you missed D-Day. And Italy was awful. And it was a slog. And it wasn't a clear cut, victory. It came at a great cost. And then later on, we went to Normandy. And our guide, his name is Colonel Brian DeToy. He's a retired colonel, instructor from West Point, a PhD historian. And he told us, he said, when you get to find a stone, and then when you get to Normandy, to the cemetery, place it on a grave and say a prayer.
Mhm.
And I decided to do that. And what I did was, I'm not going to look at names. I'm coming at it from behind. I'm just going to pick a grave and place a stone and then see who it was. And I did that. And then I looked him up, and his name was, and it's like all the way in a deep corner pocket of the cemetery. And his name was Gerald Rayfelt, and he was from Appleton, Wisconsin. He was part of the 298th Engineers Battalion. So they were the obstacle clearers on D-Day. They're the
Wow.
first wave because they got to clear the obstacles for infantry. And he turned 20 on June 4 and died 2 days later.
Oh,
And so that was really something. And then we went to Point de Hoc and how the Rangers scaled the cliff to take out the artillery, which was actually not at the point, but further back. And it's just incredible sacrifice of all these people. So I really urge you, if you have the chance, go to a military cemetery. If you happen to be overseas, go to Normandy. If you're in Rome, go to the one near Anzio. It's really incredible. So I did that. And in the process, I also got gout. It was the worst. Mary Catherine, it was the worst flare. I'm still recovering. I'm hobbling around right now. So I could really relate.
oh yes, yes, indeed.
You were,
You, it's like coming home from battle after
it really
just
was
your
like
battle was with pasta.
Yeah,
That's
I just there I am, on Omaha Beach in Utah, the Merville Battery, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like I'm there right now.
mhm.
And yet, so that was from the German beer, I'd say, and a lot
Yeah.
of cured meats. I'm such a sucker for the cured meats.
Oh my
So
gosh, who wants to pass that up? I have actually been to, particularly if you're traveling somewhere where not a lot of Americans often visit, and there's
yeah,
a military cemetery. It's nice to pay tribute there because the relatives of those folks don't get to visit.
no,
And particularly if you share it on social media, folks will appreciate that you took a little time out of your trip to do that. I visited the North Africa
oh
American Military
no,
Cemetery, which is in Tunisia.
wow,
I was in Tunisia for election observing uh,
yes,
with IRI, International Republican Institute, and this is sort of post Arab Spring when Tunisia
there was a moment,
might have been the only one that was going to go
yeah,
more liberalism than less, and it didn't turn out that way. But I did get to visit Tunisia, which is a beautiful place, and I went to the cemetery, which was insanely beautiful. It has a bunch of reflecting pools. There's no one there.
yeah,
I
of
mean,
course,
no one. It's covered in bougainvillea because of the climate. So it's just gorgeous. And there are some almost 3,000 American troops buried there
unbelievable.
who rarely get visited. And there is the most beautiful, you would love this, Vic, the most beautiful mosaic on the like opening hole
Oh
area
yeah,
depicting all of the operations and supply activities of American forces across Africa and the Persian Gulf.
oh
And
wow,
it's done so as
yeah,
to match Tunisian architecture.
right,
So it is just stunning and gigantic. And you could learn so much just standing in front of it. I should still do this. I don't know if you know this, but I don't really follow up on things like this. I think that the archives or whoever's in charge of the battle monuments should do a print of this mosaic because it's insanely gorgeous
yeah.
and people who are history buffs would love it. But anyway, that was a very moving trip for me
You know
to
what's
get to pay
interesting,
tribute there.
Mary Catherine, is at the cemetery outside of Anzio, the same thing, and there's this massive mosaic, and it shows the invasion wave, and so it's like the separate building structure, and you can to develop an appreciation of how they went from North Africa, where you were, up to
Yes.
Sicily, which I think was Operation Husky, and then ultimately Avalanche and Shingle onto the mainland, and you stand there looking at this in awe that these guys did it. And women
Amazing.
too. A lot of American nurses were killed at Anzio on the beaches, and they were known as the guardian angels, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, something else. Mary
Yes.
Mary Catherine, I'm looking at you remote. I'm surprised you're not wearing the hotel bathrobe, and I wanna know, are you a hotel bathrobe person? Number 1, and number 2, I wanna hear everything about Chicago and,
Okay.
obviously how you're doing there.
Well, no, number one, I am a person who really thinks robes are better as an idea than in practice.
Same.
Like, it's just like, it seems like it's gonna be nice and cozy, and
Looks
then
great.
it looks very luxurious, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like too hot
Yeah.
and your feet are cold and it's like sort
100%.
of unwieldy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't like it.
Okay.
It's like wearing a toga. I'm not into it.
It gets kind of heavy after a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, especially if you have a high quality one. A high quality one is almost worse.
Yes. Yes.
So
Okay, so you're
maybe
like me, you just go around naked then. You just okay, good.
maybe, and I don't mean this in a problematic way. Yes, I'm gonna ignore that one. I don't mean this in a problematic way, but maybe you and I are kimono people.
Oh, like a thinner fabric? I
Yeah, we
could do
just need
that. You know,
yeah.
if there I haven't been to a hotel where there is one, but I would try it on just to see what it's like. I've never worn one. I'm curious. I'm curious. Okay.
Anyway, I did not have nearly as exciting a week as you did,
Uh,
but we were doing, the normal get ready for school
yes.
situation,
Yes.
which requires a lot of shopping for school supplies. And you've probably experienced this, or your wife
I
has,
was gonna
whichever. I
say,
was
I
going to
don't
say,
really
maybe
experience
not.
the school supply issue. It's not my department.
So
Yes.
they give you these lists, and the
Mhm.
lists are insanely specific, right? Like you need, I think I said this, like you need several folders without the prongs or the brads, whichever one we want to refer to them as. And
Yes.
so it just gets like very specific, and I have to pack the bags for each kid
Mhm.
with the specifics. And at some point during this process, I wonder to myself, why am I adhering to the specifics? Like, do we think
Oh,
that the world will end if she goes to school with the wrong yellow folder? Because I don't think it will. I think we'll be okay.
I think it
So
depends on the teacher.
so I believe one kid went with only 2 of 3 crayon packages she was supposed to have. Another maybe went with a missing composition notebook and a ruler. And you know what? We're gonna make it work.
They
Everybody's gonna be fine.
survived. Right.
Another thing that one of them is missing is her front tooth,
Oh,
which fell out at breakfast the first day of school. So the first day of school picture has a giant gap in it
it's
in that
adorable.
smile. It is
I
really
love those
cute.
pictures. Yeah.
You think you're gonna miss the perfect little kid smile, right? Because you've been living
Sure.
with that for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and then they lose the front teeth, and it is adorable.
It is
It's
very
adorable.
it is absolutely adorable, and I love looking at those goofy pictures now. And so but did she take it in stride, I assume?
Oh yeah, she was excited about it because she's late losing her teeth.
Ah,
She's going
okay.
into 3rd grade, so this
Yeah.
is like, and
Oh, yeah, that
they say
is.
that's not bad for your teeth. Your adult teeth end up being plenty healthy, and it's
Sure.
maybe even better for them to come out late. But yeah, she's pretty late, so she's very excited about it. So she's off. Everybody's happy, having a good time at the first day of school. I did drop them off before I left for Chicago, and we're thinking about putting the toddler in a little 2-day preschool this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Give her some experience dominating the
Yes.
social structure in another
Yes.
place.
Yes.
So we're
Of
thinking
course.
about, yeah, we're thinking about that. She is and this is just a cute kidism that she
Mhm.
has just added, and we will get on with the actual news. Her new thing is she says, "Wow, amazing. Amazing, mom." And I can't stop baiting her into saying it. I'm like, I'll just say wow over and over again. So she goes, amazing.
Amazing.
Wow, amazing. It's like I have like a 2.5-year-old hype woman who just says everything's amazing.
Well, I mean, but that's, I use that all the time. It's funny. Amazing. It's still to
Amazing.
this day.
Wow,
Like,
amazing.
yeah, so, well, she's
All right.
welcome
So
to our world.
that's what's going on. Okay, now we should get to like the actual
We should. By the way,
DNC.
I heard you had a great show. Our friend you told me you had a great show with John McCormick.
I did. I
Good.
did. John McCormick came in, explained many Kamala-isms to us.
Oh, yeah.
We talked through the state of the race, which I think the state of the race is interesting. Of course, the DNC is kicking off in Chicago. That means Kamala will get at least another 3 or 4 days of very
Oh,
glowing coverage.
yeah.
Fun fact, you and your son, as part of your trip, answered 10 times more questions than Kamala Harris has answered in the last month. So, look, I will say she had a moment when she announced her economic plans
Oh, yeah, exciting.
where the coverage was not that glowing. And that was nice to see. It was like, because they had not been able to ask her any questions, once she gave them
Right,
even a little bit of meat on the bones,
right,
many people were willing to say this meat looks bad,
right.
including Catherine Rampell, the economics writer for the Washington Post,
Post.
who
Yeah.
said it's hard to tell you how bad this plan is. And
Okay.
it is as if you know anything about economics, it's as if someone decided to do the opposite of what she claims to want to do. Like she was just like, oh, we want prices to go down. So how would we housing prices, how would we get those to go up? Let's give
Yeah.
25,000 to everybody. The supply's already down, so we'll subsidize demand, and then the prices will go up. That seems like a good idea. Except she's claiming it'll do the opposite.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. So it was
Y-
nice to
w-
see a moment of realism there
I,
from
I,
the
f-
press.
I feel like she was one step away from just saying, "We'll just print more money." I mean,
I mean, really, I think that's what she wants to do. I mean, all indications are that that's what she'd
yeah,
prefer. There's
yeah,
some reporting that suggests when they did the 1.9 trillion that they shouldn't have done the first time around. This is before
yeah.
Inflation Reduction Act, quote unquote, that she wanted to do 4 trillion instead of 2.
Oh, sure. Her number
Yeah.
was much larger. And let's keep in mind, I mean, so in case our listeners are wondering, we're talking about her proposal to bring prices down and stop what she calls price gouging by what essentially is price controls,
Right.
sort of
That'll be fun
Venezuela's.
for everyone.
Yeah, no, Venezuela style without any regard for the unintended consequences, particularly on the supply side. And it's something that even Biden would not have done. And it's just very weird because she'll talk about, if elected, I'll do this. I'll be able to do this,
Right.
that, and well, she's there now.
You're
She's
there
there
now.
now
Well,
as a
and
vice president.
by the way, another terrible proposal is a 28% corporate tax rate. Okay.
Ooh, yeah,
Which would, including state taxes, put
yeah.
corporate tax rates in America at the highest in the OECD, which is the Organization for Economic
Mhm.
Cooperation and Development, an conglomerate, not conglomerate, but an organization of
Sure.
38 member countries.
Yep.
And that's how we sort of measure competitiveness. We would be at the top rate in that organization. That's going to be a problem because when you're at that rate, guess where corporate investment goes and guess where business investment goes? It goes to other countries.
Yeah.
So it's not a good idea. So there's tons of bad ideas here that to the extent that she is separating from the Joe Biden administration, of which she is a part,
Right.
she's running to the left, not to the right. So that's interesting to me. My thought about the state of the race and the state of this convention
Uh-huh.
is that this ticket has gone from a problem of cognitive decline to a problem of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, sure.
Because
That's good.
Biden was supposed to be the premier speaker last night, and he's there to tout his administration's successes, quote unquote, that voters aren't happy with. She's a part of that administration. In the speech, he's explicitly tying her to him and saying we are successful.
Yeah.
While she's on the trail saying this hasn't been successful and here's how we have to fix it.
Right.
So let's talk about that programming for the first day. First off, to give the current president that is of your party a Monday night speaking slot.
Yes.
That's not a sought after slot. That's not the one you want. I'm not sure Joe even got a hotel room in Chicago. Like they got him, he's out of here, right? Like I think he left after
he's not
the
staying
speech.
around. Yeah, that is correct.
So the plan was to give him a Monday speaking slot, give him his flowers, as they say, and let him do his thing in the hall, get all the applause, give him a send-off, put him on the funeral pyre, and make it glorious for him. That's not exactly what happened.
No, I wonder how much of it is they're trying to convince us that everything is great, obviously. That's the whole point of the program of a convention is that we're all one voice, we're all unified. And here's how it happened. Joe Biden, he took one, he realized on his own independently without any pressure that he was the bridge to the future. And like he said, he was going to be, and he was. And, with such humility and grace, he bowed out without explaining to us necessarily why. I think he might have had one mention of being old, I think, in the speech.
He had
But
one. Actually, we can play this part
Yeah.
because it was. I believe this was an ad lib, and
It was.
towards the end of the speech, and we'll play the little clip for
All right.
you.
Each of us has a part in the American story. For me and my family, there's a song that means a lot to us, that captures the best of who we are as a nation. The song is called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, and I can't sing worth a damn, so I'm not going to try. I'll just quote it. The work and prayers of centuries have brought us to this day. What shall our legacy be? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. I made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation. And I've been blessed a million times in return with the support of the American people. I've either been too young to be in the Senate because I wasn't 30 yet, and too old to stay as president. But I hope you know how grateful I am to all of you. I can honestly say, and I mean this from the bottom, give you my word as a Biden, I can honestly say I'm more optimistic about the future than I was when I was elected as a 29-year-old United States Senator. I mean it. Folks, we just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing we cannot do when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
I just want to say, for my personal taste, saying that you first ran for office when you were too young to be president, and now you're finally leaving office because you're too old to be president, but not leaving yet, right? Not
No.
leaving yet. You're still doing the job because you're too old to be president. That's not a flex. I'm not impressed. I would like for you to go do some different things at some point.
Yeah.
And this is the part where though I have very many problems with Donald Trump, unabashedly believe that his private sector experience and Vance's private sector experience, even though it's relatively short,
Right.
are better than only serving in government your entire life.
It's all he's done since he was
all-
29, going to be 30 when he became a senator. Although I would argue he has some private sector experience in the sense of making a lot of money on the side.
This is true. By the way, we should mention that the House Republicans put out a report basically saying that Biden has been guilty of impeachable conduct to the tune of $27 million. Hours before, this is the Daily Signal reporting, hours before Biden was set to speak Monday night at the Democratic National Convention, the House committees released the impeachment inquiry report, which also sharply criticizes the Biden-Harris administration for obstructing an investigation by Congress. As described in this report, the committees have accumulated evidence demonstrating that President Biden has engaged in impeachable conduct. The totality of the corrupt conduct uncovered by the committees is egregious. President Joe Biden conspired to commit influence peddling and grift. This is, fairly clear just from the atmospherics of the Bidens, because no one ever believed that Hunter was employed because he was super talented.
Yeah.
Right?
When he was serving on the board of Burisma, it's not because of his knowledge of Ukrainian politics and the energy sector.
Yeah. So that's the private sector experience he does have. At one point, Jasmine Crockett, who's a Texas House rep, who's become a bit of a Instagram legislator in the way that like Lauren Boebert is popular as a sort of a firebrand on the right, and she has a similar thing, Marjorie Taylor Greene, where she sort of like goes off on people in hearings and gets viral clips. And she said at one point, Kamala Harris has only had one client ever that she's worked for, and it's the people. And that's a nicer way of saying I've been in government my entire career.
Right.
Which is maybe why I don't understand economics at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, so speaking of Jasmine Crockett, the lineup before Biden was so long, full of so many stars who just had to speak, like House Rep from Texas, like the scintillating Chris Coons,
Governor Kathy Hochul.
Governor Kathy Hochul. By the way, can we play a quick clip of
Yeah.
her?
It's no wonder he had to flee to Mar-a-Lago. Sorry about that, Florida. Sorry about that. Trump hasn't spent much time in New York lately, except that is to get convicted of 34 felonies. And that's just fine with us, because New York's motto is Excelsior, ever upward. And Trump takes us ever downward.
I know that she sort of lucked into this position, right? Because she was the lieutenant governor and then Cuomo flames out. But she had to rise somehow.
Yeah.
And that is how she speaks in public.
Yeah. She actually sounds like, if you ever watched the Karate Kid, the original with Ralph Macchio, she sounds like the mom. Just go back and watch that. You'll know what I'm talking about.
I love
Daniel, so why are you wearing sunglasses?
That's
So
a real throwback.
but again, talking about the prosecuting of the president, it's just it's pretty blatant.
It's so unseemly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's worse than
Yeah.
that, but it's
Yeah.
unseemly at best.
Yeah.
But anyway, because of all these stars, huge stars, I'll give AOC the star mantle.
Yeah,
'cause,
you
like,
liked her. You said you.
Okay,
you
well, and
thought
I'm
she
going
was
to
really
get to
good.
that. I know our audience is going to be like, Mary Catherine, you've betrayed us. But because of this list of stars,
Yeah.
he didn't speak until 11:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Yeah.
It was 10:30 here in Chicago. 11:30 Eastern time. He spoke for almost an hour. And I think that Joe Biden is a mediocrity at best and kind of a mean-spirited, probably corrupt guy at worst.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's more likely the second. I'm trying to be nice because he's taking his leave.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have done that to him.
Yeah, that is past what you call prime time,
Yeah.
I mean, technically prime time ends at 11 because you got the news, and most people go to bed because, they watch, if you're one of the early folks, like when we grew up, you watch the 10 o'clock news on Fox 5, the local Fox affiliate. And then later on, you go to the main networks if you stay up for 11 o'clock, and maybe you watch the late night shows after that at 11:30. But that is not prime time. That's a bad slot. You might
It's
as
a
well
bad
be.
slot.
That's
on
like a Friday
Monday
night graveyard,
Yeah.
on ABC or something. I mean, it's like, so I don't know how that happened. I mean, people are arguing about whether or not that was intentional, but the argument I've heard is from the Democratic organizers of the convention. He was delayed because there was so much applause.
Mm-hmm. No, actually, Abby Phillip on CNN made this argument. Tapper said, hey, I think it's fair to say that Republicans ran a tighter ship when it came to keeping the speakers moving along, and the programming was tight. And the RNC was one of the better executed shows I've seen from a political party in a long time. Just the way it flowed,
Right.
the way that things were on time,
Right.
was quite impressive. I was not expecting that from them. So I think Jake Tapper is correct about this. And Abby says, well, as I was joking, I was being sarcastic, but she basically says, like, no, it's because they have all these stars they have to feature.
Right. Steve
And
Kerr.
She doesn't quite say, like, they just have so many amazing people in the party.
But it was
basically what she's saying.
Yeah.
And then she says that further says, like, it's not really an issue for Republicans, They don't.
Right. Because a lot of duds.
Yes.
They're in and out.
So, ignoring the fact that you could have removed Hochul, you could have removed Crockett, you could have removed any number of people, Steve Kerr, and put them on a different night or give them different slots.
Yeah.
In fact,
Daytime Emmys.
Well,
I mean, not daytime Emmys, but the ones where they award the Oscars off camera,
Yes. Well, and they did cut James Taylor, apparently, and another speaker because things were just getting really out of hand.
Wow.
Did anyone think of timing the speeches before they gave these slots to people? At any rate, I think they did it on purpose.
I mean, I don't think I'll put it to you this way. I don't think they lost any sleep on having pushed Biden out to 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is rather awkward because I guess Kamala was there too, right? I mean, it was a handoff, and she had wonderful things to say about how wonderful Joe Biden is, and it's just really unseemly and awkward. And I mean, they want us to forget. They want us to think that it was that the story has this wonderful happy ending and that there were no dark moments in between, that, that struggle between the
Right.
debate and his stepping down, that everything was fine. And yet, and he gives a speech that's very much that way, talking about how great he is. And you hear these Democrats with a straight face say that he has accomplished more than any other president, full stop. You know how we give Donald Trump a hard time, for comparing himself to, I don't know, Lincoln, but this is what's there's no difference between that and Biden. In his administration, for a president whose popularity rating for the vast majority of his term, his one term, has hovered between 36 and 41%,
Right.
claiming that it was he's done more. I mean, he's done probably more damage, but he has done more, to have done more than any other president is insane. You think about inflation and you think about the Afghanistan catastrophe and everything, student debt. I mean, the list got immigration, obviously. And somehow we're supposed to forget all these things.
Well, and this is what I mean about cognitive dissonance. If he's one of the most consequential presidents of all time, why are you running away from him?
Right. She should own it.
Someone texted me last night, and I'll fact check this. Someone texted me last night that at the moment that he talked about her tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course did not reduce inflation and
No.
people don't like at all, she did not clap for that line. That it,
Oh,
it panned her. So there's this.
that's interesting.
It's a united
Yeah.
party,
Uh-huh.
except for the fact that you have to drive a wedge between the nominee, who
Right.
is the vice president
Yeah.
for the current president, and you have to drive a wedge so deep between these two that he gives a midnight speech
Yeah.
and then is flown to California before they gavel in the next morning. That's how united they are. But you know what? They are united in being happy to do that to him. That's what they're united in.
They literally pushed him out the door. And now literally now, and now he's gone.
Now he's gone.
So that's
Except
it.
he's still president.
Except for he's for 5 months.
I know.
I don't know, but it was really weird. It was like this weird revisionist, victory lap.
Well, and we'll get to the substance of the speech in a second.
Sure.
We're doing the same thing to Biden that his party did to him, which is I'm going to talk about everyone else before we get there.
Yeah, we're going to get, right before I say, and that wraps up the episode, it'll be, oh, by the way, here's Biden now.
But I do want to note that Hillary Clinton spoke.
Yes.
Maxine Waters spoke. I'm just looking for Jesse Jackson spoke. Raphael Warnock, who was pretty impressive. Hillary Clinton, who smiled. Hillary, I often think, looks great, actually. I think
Sure.
her makeup artists are fantastic.
Mhm.
I usually think her hair looks great. And she had a very, a bit of a throwback bob last night that was not my favorite look on her. And
Okay.
I guess it's problematic for me to even talk about that, but I'm saying it as a contrast to how
Yeah.
I usually actually like how she
Right.
looked. I think she looks great most of the time. That it wasn't my thing, but the internet really liked it. She was getting a lot of yes queens for her
I'm
bob.
sure.
But substance-wise, she talked about, at one point there was a chant of lock him up,
Yep.
and she was just grinning like a Cheshire cat
Uh-huh.
up there.
That's fine.
It's fine.
It's
It's
fine.
fine because it's Trump. It's
Right.
fine.
Yeah,
That's the rule, right?
Yeah.
Oh dear. So there's that. We won't agonize over that chant in the media for the next 7 years as we have the one at Trump rallies. I do need to do a brief interlude where I regret to inform you that AOC is good.
Yeah. It's a high voice, and I have a problem with the content. I don't have a problem with I'm going to say optics. That's what I'm going to call it. I think the
Yes.
optics are amazing.
You're being less explicit than
the
I was about
optics-
Hillary's
yeah,
bob. Yes.
Mary Catherine, the optics are amazing.
Mhm.
I'm just going to say that the optics are amazing. But then she starts talking about what she's talking about. And, it's right up there with price controls. I'm just,
No, she's very wrong. She's
Yeah.
very wrong.
Yeah.
She's often clueless. And I'm damning with faint praise here, but I'm also not inclined to like her. And then I listened to that speech and she was effective.
the crowd loved it, didn't they?
Yes. And here's the thing, giving a speech in an arena like that, and this is why I was so impressed at the RNC with many of the regular people who took the stage.
Mhm.
It's very hard to do a room that big.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because you kind of can get lost in it. That you don't know what the
Yeah.
feedback's going to be like, how much applause you're going to get, how much
Yeah.
reaction you're going to get.
It takes a lot of good crowd reading skills.
Yes, and she really was on it.
Mhm.
There's a part of the speech, and we can play a clip for you, that she just says, and I think turning into the insults about herself
Mhm.
works for her, where she just says, and again, all of her proposals to help working people, almost to a proposal, will increase the problem she's trying to fix for
Sure,
working
of
people.
course.
So I don't believe any of her promises, and I'm not sure she knows that she's wrong about these things, but she says, people tell me to go back to being a bartender. And I say, that would be fine with me because there's nothing wrong with working for a living.
Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living.
As
And
opposed to
I'm
what
like-
she's doing now.
And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
pretty good.
Okay, that's pretty good. And also, no way she's going back to being a bartender.
No,
She's
no.
only going. She's heading in a different trajectory. Yeah.
She is. But like, look, you can say she's a phony. You can say she's wrong about all these things. And I often say those things. But that was a good speech. So I just think she is underestimated at the peril of people who have to go up against her.
Yeah.
So just.
I
and
mean,
she
yeah,
did,
she's.
she did do that really good question at the Secret Service thing the other day too.
She did. She did.
What if I get lost to AOC, guys?
You know,
Save me from myself.
Yeah, you know what? I think it might be a different experience if you know how like in the 1960 presidential debate, people thought Nixon did better if you only heard him, didn't see him, and vice versa with Kennedy. If you're watching on TV, I think the effect of AOC is if you see her and hear if all you did was hear her, I don't know, but that's me.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Look, we're doing optics. Like she's very pretty.
Well, yeah.
She's very
Yeah,
pretty.
she is.
All righty. Shall we talk about the substance of Joe Biden's?
Oh, yes.
And then I'll tell you a little bit about just like what it feels to be in
Please.
Chicago for this event. The substance of Joe Biden's speech. He almost felt like he just took the Philadelphia mean speech where he stood in front of the red lit hole.
Yes. The gloom and doom.
And recycled a lot of it.
Yeah.
It was shouty. It was mean-spirited. By the way, he was also introduced by both Jill Biden and Ashley Biden, his daughter.
Yes.
Jill Biden got an entire hype video.
Dr. Jill.
Dr. Jill. Ashley gave a fairly long intro. I'm like, you guys are pushing him further and further into the night. I did enjoy that Jill Biden's entrance song was Fatboy Slim, I Have to Praise You Like I Should.
That's from way back?
Yeah, and it was like, I have to celebrate you,
Right.
baby.
Yeah, it goes
and I was
on
like,
and on.
And I was like, is this song for him or for you?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
who's getting praised? Anyway.
Did they get
so
to
I
the
thought-
part of the song where it goes like that? No, they didn't do that part.
No.
Okay.
So I thought, first of all, his relatives pushed him further into the night. I think the one thing that the Kamala Harris campaign actually deserves credit for, not the things they've been given by the press, which is most of their success.
Yes.
The thing they actually deserve credit for is that they have tacitly admitted that the threat to democracy thing was kind of BS and wasn't working. Now, Joe did not want to admit that. So his speech was that.
Yeah. It's interesting because it obviously the threat to democracy, I think, really worked on a certain segment who are now locked in to be voting for, well, initially Biden Harris and now Harris Walz. They're locked in, and it was everybody else that they're going after now in the middle, right? These folks in Pennsylvania or wherever. What is the message? It's not threat to democracy. Is it weird? No, maybe it's going to be something else tomorrow. We don't know. But I think that, I mean, there really are a lot of people who really accepted that as actual fact that, this would be if this is the end of America if Donald Trump wins. Like that's it.
Well,
no more elections.
There's also a funny thing where when liberals get the memo, they really get the memo and they shift hard, right? So they have shifted hard from threat to democracy to joy. That's their tonal
joy.
That's their tonal shift.
Yep.
Now, I think it's nonsense.
Their vibe.
That's their vibe. but strategically it's wise. The funny thing to me, and there's one clip from PBS, is that, and look, I'm friends with many of them.
Yeah.
They would call me an anti-Trumper.
Sure.
They're the never Trumpers, right?
Yep.
The never Trumpers have gotten left behind because they're not distributed the same memos that the libs get. So the never Trumpers are like, wait. No. He is a threat to democracy.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about? And the Dems are like, nah, man, I'm not sure we ever believed that. And we're trying to win. We're trying to win.
Yeah. No, if you remember, Ezra Klein mentioned that. I think he was speaking to some other Democratic, it might have been some other Democratic operative or a member of Congress who sort of intimated that very much so. And people freaked out initially saying, what do you mean he's not? Or that they already had accepted. This is before the switch was pulled with Harris and Biden. And they were expecting Biden was going to lose in a large electoral landslide. And they were saying, yeah, we'll have to slog through 4 years of Trump, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And that freaked out a lot of people.
Because you've been selling them kind of a lie.
Yeah.
Like, I think Trump poses dangers. My issue has always been like, are they any greater than the dangers that this obviously abusive of power party is posing in trying to get rid of him?
Well, no, I had to explain that. I explained this to a friend who was convinced that he's just going to keep on, Trump will stay there forever. And I was like, well, no, he's term limited. And he didn't believe me that he's term limited by the 22nd Amendment.
Interesting.
And I'm like, trust me, he can't, unless you, of course, do. But I mean, look, my friend Bob Kagan, firmly believes. I mean, there are serious people out there who will make that argument. There's also serious people who will make the argument, like Robert Reich, about price controls, but that's a whole other story. So, you'll find them.
Sometimes I do ask, like, I think I may have mentioned it, but somebody was in my replies the other day talking about Handmaid's Tale, and I was like, look, there's already been a Trump administration. Did he forget to send me my bonnet and my cloak? Like, what happened? Because I have evidence here,
Right. It happened already, and we're still here.
Yes. Now, another main sort of message of the night, I would say there were a lot of references to January 6th. There was a lot. It wasn't just Biden. Okay. There was a lot of threat to democracy.
Sure.
And there was a lot of abortion messaging.
Mm-hmm.
People who in states that have more restrictive abortion laws have sort of the worst case scenario story. Those are spotlighted. And I think you can have an intellectual back and forth about like what those cases look like and how you deal with them compassionately and acknowledge that there are upsides and downsides to these different sets of laws in different states. We're not having that discussion at the DNC, but I think that was another major part of their messaging. And it's interesting to me that it was on Monday night, because I kind of thought the theme of January 6th and threat to democracy, you're doing that on Monday night so that you can get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Right? This is fan service to the people in the arena. But the abortion stuff, they don't think is fan service. They think that one reaches everybody. So I wonder if that will just be every single night.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but they're really big on abortion, as you know. They've got a van. You made a very funny SNL reference to it, in fact.
Yes, we can play my clip from Fox the other day. It's pretty bleak also, as Raymond rightly points out. I don't know, it's a strange life trajectory. One day you're a college Democrat, the next day you're getting a vasectomy in a van down by the Chicago River. Like, it just doesn't feel like the greatest move. And I can kind of goof on the vasectomies, right? Like, these are grown people. They're the only person involved in the decision. If your decision is to take yourself out of the gene pool, perhaps you're the type of person who should take yourself out of the gene pool at that point. But the other stuff is, abortions are really... This is sad. And I think on both hands, for women and men, part of this is like, by the way, last week they were like, I can't believe J.D. Vance would suggest that Democratic Party policies and candidates are anti-child. And it's like, well, do I have something for you from Planned Parenthood? But like, this is sort of a bleak trajectory, and I think they're being sold a bill of goods about how family looks and like what family can be, because it can be some of the most rich and beautiful and magical things in life, and gives you this huge change of perspectives, which is very clear that people in line at the van by the Chicago River need in their lives. Yes, indeed. Planned Parenthood has a van, a mobile health care van, outside of the arena, offering both medication abortions and vasectomies.
Wow.
Now, I chose to goof on the vasectomies in that segment because the part of this that's about the abortions makes me so sad I almost have trouble talking about it.
Yeah.
So It's just, but the whole thing is so bleak. And they, you know, just last week, they're like, I can't believe anyone that JD Vance would suggest that Democrats are anti-child. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, let me point you to the van,
right.
the van where this is going on from one of the organizations that is one of their
Yeah,
most vociferous supporters,
yeah.
enthusiastic supporters, and who, by the way, they want our tax money to go to
Oh, yeah,
regularly. They're
right.
like huge advocates of this.
Yeah, this wasn't some fringe rando that they were able to, point out on Fox News and say, "Oh, look at this crazy person over here." No, this is Planned Parenthood. And again, you're right. After the whole JD Vance thing, everyone's like, "Hey, we love families too. We love families too." Just and by the way, you could go here and get a snip. So and there's no way that's being done in the van. That can't possibly happen.
Well, so I'm a little confused about this. Perhaps I should do some investigation when I go over to the United Center
Yes,
because it my understanding is that that's a procedure that takes several days to recover from. That's
sure.
not
Yeah.
in a hospital. It's obviously outpatient, but it's not comfortable or
No.
super simple.
No,
And
and there's a sterility issue? I'd be
yeah, and just like,
really?
are we? This is how you want to do this?
Yeah,
And as I said, I don't think this is a bunch of dads of 3 kids who are like, I'm going to hang it up.
yeah,
I think these are young people who have been told not to bring children into this burning world,
right,
which is
burning literally.
yeah, which is a very sad bill of goods to be sold,
Yeah,
and I am sad for them. I think it's the whole the abortions are desperately deeply sad,
mhm,
and the vasectomies are almost as sad. It's just I
mhm.
can joke about them a little bit better. By the way, Cedric Richmond, former congressman, and he's a co-chair of the. Actually, interestingly, on his Twitter bio, he still has Biden-Harris reelection campaign. Should probably change
He's up.
that. I saw him on Fox with Brett Baer, and he was asked some tough questions, and including about the van, which we can play a clip of that.
There'll be a lot of talk about that as an issue. What do you make of Planned Parenthood offering abortions and vasectomies outside the convention?
Well, I think that was a store talking about we'll give you free food.
No, I know,
if-
but there is
if
a
you did
mobile
it.
unit, a Planned Parenthood unit.
Look, let me say something about this. The decision to have an abortion and terminate a pregnancy is a gut-wrenching decision. And I don't think either party should talk about it like it's an easy decision. Or women or men come together and make that decision with their doctors or without their doctors. Easy. I mean, it's a gut-wrenching decision. And I think that's the part that we focus on as Democrats, is that we should respect a woman's right to make that decision. And then there are a lot of people who need help to conceive, to have one of the best miracles in the world, which is to have a baby and to have someone who comes in the world who looks like you and that you just want to nurture. And IVF is important, but neither party should make light of the fact that it's a gut-wrenching decision. We believe that women should have that right to make that decision.
He's a person you shouldn't underestimate because he sounded normal throughout that interview.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's going to be training Kamala Harris to sound normal and answer questions well, but
Right.
watch out for that guy. Although now I'm less impressed with him now that I see the bio has not been changed to the new campaign.
Well, much like the Democratic platform that had 15 references to the Biden the second Biden term?
Honestly,
Yeah.
all you had to do was search by just Control F.
Right.
This
I know.
isn't even an advanced copy editing problem. But yes, Vic is correct. The platform for the DNC has many references to a second Biden term, which undercuts the message of Kamala Harris, who wants to pretend that this is not a second Biden term because the Biden term has been unpopular.
Right. Right. This is quite different from LBJ inheriting the Kennedy term after the assassination, at least until 64. And then he ran on his own. Then it was the Johnson term from, 64, 68, and then 69. Again, the problem here is that she wants to point out that she acknowledges that things can be better, particularly with, the high cost of living and the need for things like affordable housing. But that suggests that she's on the outside right now and
Mhm.
that, once elected, I can do these things. But in fact, she is the current vice president of the United States. So as we pointed out multiple times, this is a real conundrum for them. Not that I don't think that, and I honestly don't think it's going to matter though. In the end, I mean, we're worked up over this. We think that these things are glaring contradictions, but by and large, she's getting a pass from the media. And I mean, the whole thing is whether or not she's going to take any questions. And people are arguing. I know James Carville said this to Jake Tapper the other day. Just cool your heels. She'll eventually talk. I mean, there's only like 60 days left or whatever it is, 70 days, and not with two debates notwithstanding, she may try to pull off not having to deal with the media at all and just have people vote. People are going to be starting voting soon. And
Well, I
and she'd
think
be fine with that.
Yeah, I think my question is, after the month of coverage, we've had a weird thing where back to back, a Republican candidate got 3 or 4 of the best weeks
Yeah.
that a Republican candidate has ever gotten. Now, it wasn't by virtue of the press liking him.
No.
It was by virtue or at all giving him puff pieces. It was by virtue of the fact that he literally got shot.
Yeah.
And then the other party was simultaneously falling apart.
Yeah.
For 3 weeks.
That's right.
Okay. And then on a dime, we turn towards the Kamala Harris campaign, who gets a month of some of the most ridiculous soft coverage I have ever seen, including the Obama years. So the question for me is, should she be further ahead? Should she have turned the tide more? I don't know.
Right. So, I mean, these things have a way of, I mean, if you listen to our good friend Hugh Hewitt, he's very much an optimist on this. And he says, look, everyone's going to get a bounce. She's going to get a bounce. Dukakis got a bounce in 88.
Right.
I remember that myself and
Right.
being much discouraged as a high schooler at the time that HW was going to lose in 88. But of course, they turned that around. But it baffles me because we're talking about nothing has changed in terms of the past is the past, right? She presided over a border catastrophe, right? She was
Right.
the deciding vote that led to massive inflation. She's the last person in the room, she claims, for the Afghanistan fiasco.
Right.
Now she's proposing price control so we can be like Venezuela, and somehow she's up by almost 5 points. So, and I like to think that for a lot of people, and people are talking about Wisconsin, people are talking about Pennsylvania when it comes to fracking, that at the end of the day, it's not going to be a vibe shift thing. It's going to be actual pocketbook issues and the economy. And that's what's on most people's mind, and who's going to be doing a better job. But I don't know. After this convention, she could be up by 10 points.
It's possible.
The problem is there's not much time left after that.
There's not much time left after that. And I guess the other problem is that the Republicans are saddled with a candidate who, although he has various very specific talents, one of them is not advocating in a way that would highlight these policy issues and drill on the very issues he needs to be talking about. So I watched Trump at a York, Pennsylvania gathering yesterday. He spoke for like 50 minutes, I think. The first 10 minutes were great.
Yeah. Again,
Well, great-ish.
Oh.
His tone is low energy because I think he's not talking about the thing he wants to talk about, but he's talking about what he needs to talk about.
right.
And so the question is, with a lackluster candidate not really being grilled on the other side, can you win on policy without a candidate who's making the argument on the policy?
Right.
Can you say that she's really far left without a person who's prosecuting that case? And I think the answer becomes you got to prosecute the case in TV ad buys, and I don't see them doing that. They haven't reserved the time yet that would make that happen, which is I'm very confused about, because allegedly they have lots of money. I think the reporting has shown that they
That's
have
right.
plenty. Can I call out a couple very serious lies in Biden's speech real quick?
Yeah.
Number one, he repeated the Charlottesville thing. Look, I was very hard on Trump at the time of the Charlottesville thing because I
Sure.
was like, my dude, just go hard on the white supremacists, right? But
Right.
it is, even Snopes admits, fine people on both sides was a reference to the argument that protesters and counter-protesters were having in Charlottesville about statues.
Yeah.
And he was saying that these American citizens who disagree about this thing, about Confederate statues,
Right.
there are fine people on both sides. That's actually a good thing to say. And then he says specifically in the same event, and on the quickly,
Right.
that the white supremacists and Nazis
Sure.
should be roundly condemned.
Yeah. He did that.
He did that. We can play the clip.
I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
So that's number one. Number two, he used bloodbath again. This one makes me very angry. He keeps doing it over and over again. It is such a mischaracterization of what Trump said.
Right.
Trump's use of bloodbaths was specifically economic.
Yeah.
And it's very clear
Right.
from what he's saying. We can play that clip.
Car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories.
He does not seem to care that he's telling lies. I mean, this is amazing. And this is President Biden, because, after the debate, the media had the narrative was one side was incoherent and the other side told lies, as if the incoherent side did not also tell lies, but he does this all the time. He talks about his relationship with Xi Jinping, for example, or he'll make references about Bo dying in Iraq. It doesn't stop him. And he's going to, again, you just, keep on telling the same story. A certain chunk of people are going to just accept it as fact, along those same lines as J.D. Vance and the couch. It's wholly fabricated,
God, I know.
So it's the same thing with Trump in this case. Or, when they used to make Trump, all the late night hosts used to make fun of Trump in Russia with, the escorts and the tape, which I'm not going to get into those details. None of it was true.
Yeah.
And they got so much mileage out of
true.
it. And you're right. And Biden's will get a little bit more mileage out of this as well.
Here's Biden talking about border crossings.
Women are not without electoral. Border encounters have dropped over 50%. In fact, there are fewer border crossings today than when Donald Trump left office. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. My God."
I mean, this one doesn't pass the smell test at all. Once he decided that he could enforce the law, which he opted not to do after Trump left office because he has to govern in opposition to Trump. And then Kamala, of course, is in charge of all of this and doesn't have the brilliant idea to enforce the law at any point. Once they decided, now that Congress didn't do our bidding exactly as we asked, maybe we should just try doing what we can do to enforce the border.
Right.
And so
they can do it anytime.
They can. Crossings have gone down, much like inflation. They've gone down from the horrible problem he created, but they have not reached January 2021 levels. And the problem, much like inflation, has been building throughout the last 3.5 years. So that one's nonsense. And then lastly, here he is talking about schools.
During the pandemic, Kamala and I helped states and cities get back their schools back open.
Yes, the party that had Randy Weingarten giving a speech earlier and at one of the gatherings of delegates and let her write the CDC rules and released a guideline in February 2021 that would have, if everybody had adhered to it, I believe would have closed a giant majority of schools that were already open, right? They were the problem. If people had adhered to the guidelines, we would have shut down schools in a bunch of counties where they were already open because those were red counties. Those were dangerous counties. I don't mean red electorally. I mean in virus stats.
Yeah.
They were the blockage. They were never the help. Never.
No.
And it's just such a giant lie.
And Randy Weingarten also talked now about the importance of climate change and education, that it's much of their duty. It's incumbent on them to push for that sort of thing. Well, they already pushed for it with the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course is the largest climate bill ever passed. I don't know why they don't just claim that. I mean, sometimes they do, but
well, because they have to pretend it was inflation
Yeah.
related. So those were the major ones. Of course, along with that, he talks about how he paid teachers a bunch more money. Notably, the districts that stayed closed longer were the ones who got
Right.
even more money than the
Yeah.
ones that went back, because we got to reward bad behavior, not good behavior. Just a total, they're just trying to memory hole that so badly. And it'll probably work for a lot of people, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But I'll
Right.
keep talking about it. Lastly, I'll just tell you a little bit what it's like to be in Chicago.
Yes. Please
So
do. Before I forget, though, you had mentioned really briefly about Trump's problem when he's on the stump and
Yeah.
what he needs to focus on. And I would say the situation is we're at a really critical juncture here for him, where he does have to actually decide about whether or not he really does want to win.
would you
Uh,
like to win, or would
would
you
you
like to be
win
humiliated
and then
again?
and then drill down on those particular topics and those that are of concern to most voters and winning the people in the middle and not continuing to pander to the people who are already going to vote for him? Or do you give in again to the lack of discipline, the lack of self-control, and above all, the pettiness? That's
Yeah.
it. Now, I had questions for you, Mary
I think we
Catherine.
know the answer, but go ahead.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem. And this is why I'm a pessimist about this whole thing now. I'd love to know what the mood is in Chicago. And also, don't forget to add if you have eaten anything very Chicago-ish.
I don't
Chicago.
think I've done anything specifically Chicago yet,
Mm.
but I've had some great meals already.
Okay.
And the weather is fantastic.
Oh,
It
good.
is perfect.
Yeah.
Like 72 degrees with no humidity.
Yeah.
Sun
Chicago can
shining.
be terrible in the summer. So
Oh, it's so lovely. So that will improve
Yes.
everybody's mood. The protesters outside the United Center are quite hostile.
Yeah.
And I have not ventured near them or gotten stuck anywhere, but I have had friends who've encountered them.
Okay.
And not like right-leaning friends. I just mean anyone
Yeah.
walking past. It is a pretty chippy environment over there. And they at one point got
yeah.
through a barrier yesterday and were pushed back. So look, again, this is a united party aside from the fact that they have to have these huge barriers to keep out their protesters from the left flank of
Yeah.
their own party.
Because Kamala Harris is not anti-Israel enough, you know?
It's true, even though she's meeting with, the mayor of Dearborn and
Yeah.
sort of promising behind the
Yeah.
scenes to maybe do arms embargoes with Israel, but
Right.
we won't know about any of that because nobody's going to ask her a question.
And Biden himself not talking about, pushing for ceasefire and not mentioning at all Hamas, Iran.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I am remiss
Yes.
to not mention that after he accused Trump of doing fine people on both sides, he offers us this.
Yeah.
Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides.
I mean, look, you can go look at the signs and listen to the people talk at the protest. They're pretty clear about whether many of them just saying, I've seen several videos saying October 7th was great. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gotten very explicit. And to sort of, oh, those guys really have a point,
Yeah.
is the same thing you're accusing Trump of doing. By the way, the Biden administration had hoped to get a ceasefire deal this week by, again, forcing Israel to take terms that don't make
Yeah.
sense for Israel to take.
Mhm.
You know who rejected it? Oh, not Israel.
Yeah.
Hamas rejected it.
Right.
They think that these terms just won't work for them because they say Netanyahu is putting obstacles in the way of the agreement.
Yeah.
Obstacles like not wanting to allow his people to be killed wantonly, I guess, because they want them to withdraw entirely from the Gaza Strip, get a permanent ceasefire. And here's the thing, the sad news is that the Israeli military recovered the bodies of 6 more
Yep.
hostages
That's
from
right.
Gaza. And I think what's happening here is what we've said for several months, which is that probably a lot of these people are not alive. And
Yeah.
so they can't deal in the way that one would deal, even with the White House being really lenient on them, because they don't have anything to trade.
Right. Oh, by the way, did Biden mention at all the American hostages?
No, that wasn't in the speech.
No? Okay.
That
Just
wasn't
checking.
in the speech.
Just checking.
I mean,
So.
woo! Anyway, so that's day one.
Yeah, I'm going to imagine that there's more planned from the protesters as we get closer to Kamala's big speech. And I would also refer our listeners to the Free Beacon's great reporting coverage. Colin Anderson and Jessica Kostescu, also on the ground there in Chicago,
Awesome.
talking about these things because you might not get a lot of it from some other media outlets.
Oh, and I
So
forgot
check it out.
my food rundown.
Oh, yeah.
I went to Gibson's Steakhouse
Oh, that's a great
yesterday.
steakhouse. I've been there. I've been to Gibson's. It's fantastic.
And there's somebody staying very close by, I believe in the Waldorf Astoria. That must be very important because they were being very aggressive even about foot traffic. So I stumbled on Gibson's because I kept getting turned away trying to find the place I was actually going to. So I ended up at Gibson's outside having a nice meal
Oh my gosh.
in the beautiful
Yeah.
weather. The funny
Yeah.
thing is though, everything where everyone's staying, which is more Chicago proper, Magnificent Mile,
Uh-huh.
this area,
Uh-huh.
is a long way from the arena.
Yes.
So there are shuttles and
Sure. To get to
Ubers
the
and all
United
that.
Center.
But everybody's staying around here because they want to go to the great restaurants and they want to
Yeah.
hang out down here. So going over to the event space
Yeah.
is quite onerous, unlike Milwaukee, where it was in the middle of everything.
Right.
So that was very nice.
Now, once you're there at the United Center, you're there.
Oh yeah. It
Mhm.
is. It's a trek to get
Yeah.
over there. The building itself is very nice, but again, it doesn't help the party environment when the venue and the
Right,
parties have
because
to
of
be
the
so far
distance.
apart.
Yeah.
But Dems are good at partying.
Okay.
That part they've got under control. But yeah, I imagine everyone's mood will be improved. Maybe even the protesters by this weather.
You you know what's crazy, Mary Catherine, really quickly, is I was at the last Democratic convention in Chicago,
Oh really?
which was
The 96 one?
28 years ago.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
was a young pup.
Thus far, I have had a nice the steakhouse meal.
I went to
had
Gene
a
and
nice-
Giorgetti's at the time with our friend Matt Labash, which was a good lunch.
That is a good lunch.
But Gibson's is great. Did you get a Chicago dog?
I haven't had a Chicago dog. I had a nice French meal last night with some friends at
Oh.
a very Instagram worthy restaurant called La
Okay.
Serre, I think.
Ooh.
It was delish. We had a lovely time.
Are you going to get deep dish?
I probably will because I really like deep dish.
So do
I know it's
I.
a little controversial. I think
know.
it's great.
No, I'm from Jersey. Colin Anderson, my colleague, hates deep dish. It's not real pizza. I said, no, I'm not saying it's pizza, but as a thing, to eat, it's a pie. It's a giant meat tomato pie.
It's a pizza casserole.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'll call it something different. I'll still eat it. Giordano's, Lou Malnati's, great.
Yeah, I will probably have one before I leave. So,
Okay.
and I don't
wonderful.
mean a whole pizza. Maybe I do mean a whole pizza.
No
I
one
don't
will
know.
ever. No judging. You're talking to a guy who is hobbling around from drinking so much beer that I can't. I'm not criticizing anybody's dietary habits right now.
Oh my goodness.
That's it.
All righty.
Okay. Quick call out to some of our listeners on X for pointing out the lone toilet is known as the Pittsburgh Potty.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, as 1967 Mustang Man, as his handle says, they were essential in a day when sewage backups were more common. It's at the lowest point in the house and not surrounded by anything important, so it makes cleanup easier when the eventual backup happens. Thank you very much for that lovely note. And that wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. I'm all over Fox for the next couple of days until I get home to my family. So you can check me out, I believe, on Martha McCallum's show, on Hannity, on broadcast, all over the place. I'll keep you posted on my Twitter if I get my stuff together. All right. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.